How wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you.
Salman Rushdie, 2 feet away, not on a flickering screen.
Yes, I know. Yes, this is really me.
So welcome to Walk the Talk.
Thank you.
It's taken us some time getting you on the show,
Yes,
but
finally.
now that you are here,
Yes.
and good to see you in India sort of often, because I think you threatened to bore us by coming here so often that it'll cease to be news.
I think that's right. But I mean, this time I hope the thing that will be news is something that I'm really here to, because I care about it, which is the film of Midnight Children.
Right.
It's been a long time coming. I mean, the book is already more than 30 years old.
That's right.
More than 30 years old, and there have been attempts before to make to dramatize it, which for one reason or another didn't happen. But in some ways, I think of it as kind of karma, because I think the kind of team that we managed to get this time behind it was much superior to any of the people who had previously been interested in it.
And also, a film is a good ploy to get people who are now more lazier about reading to get to.
Well, I hope
to see the story.
Obviously, I hope that if the film is well liked, that it will take some people back towards the book.
Right.
But I think you have to really think of a film as a thing of its own. In the end, if you're making a movie, you're trying to make a good movie. And I would say to Deepa that we should not think of it so much as an adaptation of the book, but as a relative of the book. It's like a first cousin of the book, that like there's a strong family resemblance, but it's not exactly the same thing. And I think there's that point always in the process of adaptation.
And has she answered that question well enough?
I have to say I'm really very happy with the film. And I think we were lucky in many ways. I mean, of course, Deepa is a wonderful. First of all, she's a wonderful director of actors,
right?
And she's also a wonderful director of child actors. So, one of the remarkable things in the film is that the children in the film give something.
And she's tough enough to deal with celebrities like you.
She's just as much of a celebrity. So the celebrities it never was a subject. But what was good is that we established very quickly.
Yeah.
We're both very kind of direct people,
but many lesser filmmakers would be intimidated by your reputation.
But it wasn't to do with it. I mean, we just, we got on very well.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And we got on very well because both of us speak our minds. We're both quite direct people. We don't beat around the bush. So that meant that we were quite early able to make an open working relationship, And I had admired her films before. I had actually interviewed her on television in America when she released Water.
I see. And what do you remember from that interview?
Well, I remember, I had seen the film and been very struck by it, but what I remembered is how easy the conversation was between us, that there was no awkwardness or stiffness, which sometimes happens, And then, I was in Toronto because I had a book coming out and I had one evening free, and so I said, let's have dinner. And we went out to dinner, and I think we were at her house for dinner, and we started talking about, in fact, originally we weren't even talking about Midnight Children. She was interested in some of my other books, She was interested in Shalimar the Clown, etc. So we were talking about maybe doing something, and then she suddenly said, who has the rights to Midnight Children? And I said, well, as it happens, I have the rights to Midnight Children. And she said, why don't we do that? Can I do that? And I said, okay. And that was the deal. And it was just, I think it was instinct on her part and an instinctive reaction on my part. And then we were both a little bit nervous, I think, when we settled down to work on it. Because you never know. You can get on with people socially is one thing, but to actually work with somebody, it's another thing. But the first time we sat down to talk about it seriously in my study in New York, we had both made lists of, images and scenes and things that we thought should be in the book and so on. And what struck both of us was that the lists were almost identical. And so then we thought, we're on the same page here. We're sort of trying to make the same movie, And from then on, our confidence grew in each other. We began to trust each other. And there were times when I would say, look, this is something we have to have. I'm sorry, we have to have it. And she would give in. And sometimes she would say, look, I don't want to do that. I want to do it like this. And you just have to trust me. And in the end, I would say, okay, we'll try, do it like that.
Until in the end she made you narrate.
Which it never occurred
That was
to
a
me.
googly.
Yes, that was, and she's very determined, Deepa. So in the end, I mean, I was resistant to it actually, because I thought, get an actor, get somebody who does this for a living to do it, and I was worried that it would seem. I mean, the rest of the film is so beautiful, the cinematography, the performances, etc. I didn't want to be the amateur person spoiling it, So I was quite nervous about it, but in the end, it seems to have worked out.
Every reviewer would have said, because Salman Rushdie would not keep himself out of
Exactly. He wrecked the film.
We know it's his book, but can't stay out of it.
Well, all I'm saying is I tried very hard to stay out of it. I mean, even to the extent that there was one point when actually she wanted me to play a small cameo role in the movie. And I said, no, I shouldn't do that because it'll be distracting to the audience. Because in the particular scene we were talking about, the focus of interest was not my character, it was another character.
Right.
And I said, if everybody is not paying attention where they should be because they're all going, is that Salman Rushdie? It'll break.
What we call that phenomenon in Hindi cinema, we call it an item number.
I wasn't going to sing or dance.
Salman Rushdie as an item number.
That would have been a bad thing, I think.
So, yet it's a kind of a sweet revenge, if you can't read my book for whatever reason.
No, well, Midnight
I'll
Children,
give
of
you
course,
my-
Midnight Children people can read. No, it's been here all this time. And actually, one of the things that was very important to me, when the book came out all those years ago, was the fact that people here liked it. And I always thought that if people in India had not cared for it, then it doesn't matter how many Booker
But
prizes.
frankly, if I can make a statement, if people in India and elsewhere had read the satanic verses, then this reaction would not have been justified.
No, and I think actually those people who have read the book more or less don't have this reaction.
In fact, they're searching.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a number of people come to me saying, "Where's the bad bit?
Have you taken it out?"
Yeah, no, exactly. But the trouble is that a lot of people reacted without reading it. I mean, I've had quite a few people who were involved in demonstrations and protests against the book back at that time come up to me and sort of apologize and say, I've read your book and actually I really like it, and it seems to be actually Muslim people saying, I think in a way you wrote it for us, and etc. So it's a strange thing that happens when you actually take the trouble to read.
Well, I mean, for many of us who were here, we were so disappointed that the book was banned in India without anyone having read it.
Yeah, well,
I think it was just a panic reaction with an election coming up.
Well, fortunately now we live in an age where you can't ban books.
Right, you can just download them.
Exactly. So I think that's one of the great benefits of this information age, so-called.
Right.
That it's very hard now to.
So now that you've made a movie out of one, a movie out of another one.
I don't think I would write the adaptation again. I mean, for me, it was a very interesting experience. I think if I was to do another movie, I would like to write an original screenplay for the cinema. Instead of adapting is a very difficult thing, I always thought Haroon and the Sea of Stories would make a good film, I always thought The Enchantress of Florence would make a good film. And the set is even Fatehpur Sikri is standing there, so it's not so difficult to make the film.
Yeah, it's one of the most stunning settings in the whole world. Yes.
And it's already there.
It's already there. Yes.
And so is Renaissance Florence already there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to build the sets.
Right.
So let's hope so. I think it always surprised me that I had to wait this long for anybody to make any film of any of my books. So maybe people will get enthused.
Is this one of the biggest creative prizes for a writer?
No,
to have
it's
big film made.
No, it's just the next project. I think if you're a writer, you just go from project to project. You don't give them rankings. It was interesting to me because it was something I'd never done. And I think one of the things that always you're looking for as an artist is to find a challenge that you haven't faced before.
So when you saw the first cut of the film, was there anything that surprised you?
Well, long before the first cut.
Nobody knows the story and the book more intimately than you.
Yeah, no, I went to see the first thing I did was to go and see the rushes. After they came back with I saw all the footage, And well, the first thing that struck me was that we were unusually lucky in our lighting cameraman, because the look of the film the extraordinary beauty of the film is quite something. I think whether or not you like the story, I think you can't deny that it looks very beautiful, and also it looks like, it looks like we had $100 million to spend, which we did not. Nothing like that. But Giles Nutchins, the cameraman, had just such an extraordinary eye that he makes it look like it's a huge budget movie, whereas actually it's quite a modest budget. So that was one thing. I just couldn't, and also the, Dileep Mehta's production design was so meticulous. His attempt to recreate the India, Pakistan, Bangladesh of that period, the 50s, 60s, 70s, But I mean, it was sometimes quite shocking to me that he would create rooms, which actually reminded me of rooms that I'd grown up in, and people carrying objects like cameras, which I remembered my father carrying around, like old Rolleiflexes.
Yes.
You could hear the click 100 yards away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So I thought that, the way in which the past was recreated was very shocking. It's almost shocking to me.
But that's what sort of reminds me that we've been so unfair in depriving you of that connection with your past. We would have preferred to do this interview, for example, in Bali Maran today.
Yes, yeah.
That's where you
Well, my
belong.
father's family was an old Delhi family.
Yes.
And I mean, when my parents were first married, that's where they lived.
I was born in Old Delhi as well,
Yeah,
so it would have been wonderful. But
Yes, and I mean,
but the problem is everybody would have recognized you, and
Yeah.
almost nobody would have read
anything
the
I've
book
written.
in question.
Oh, anything. That I've
Or
written.
anything.
But yes, it's true that, I mean, my parents, as I say, they moved from Delhi to Bombay just before, like the year before I was born.
Right.
So I never actually lived.
Right.
In my childhood, I never lived in Old Delhi, but it was where my father's family was from.
Right. And you speak so fondly of your father in your book.
Yes. Finally, I'm so pleased because, I think it's easy to see, especially if you read Midnight Star and so on, that there were difficulties in my relationship with my father in real life. But there was also this other side, which I finally got to talk about, which is how much I owed to him, and how much of his idea, his way of seeing the world, became my way of seeing the
Talk
world.
about two things that he taught you.
Well, he taught me not to believe in religion.
Yes. Unbelief, I think that's the expression you use.
Yeah.
Unbelief.
And he was just, I mean,
And yet
to be
never
really,
stop thinking about God.
to be very interested
Or
in it.
debating.
Yeah, because I mean, that was his interesting, that he was completely without religious belief, but he had enormous scholarly interest, particularly in the history of Islam, actually, which then he handed down to me.
How do mythologies get created? In
Well,
actually
like that.
societies, I mean, forget the rest of the Islamic world, but Pakistan is still was always a kind of democracy. It was not a classical dictatorship.
Yeah.
And India certainly, I mean, India was the first country to ban it.
I think one of the reasons why writers and people in power so often have conflicts is that politicians also are trying to make up the world. Politicians are also trying to present versions of reality which they want us to buy. And quite often those versions are ridiculously untrue.
And they are not even, as Jack Nicholson would have said, different versions of some truth.
No,
they are just completely made up.
Completely made up, and I think that's not unique to Islam or anything. It's part of the nature of power to make up the world to suit itself.
Right.
And that's sadly what happened to me. I think one of the ironies of our age is that you find the writers of fiction, which is supposed to be untrue, often being obliged to be the truth tellers, because the people who are supposed to be telling you how it is are lying to you.
Right.
This is the ancient conflict of art and power, and I just got caught up in one of those conflicts.
Because a light question to this. First of all, for India to be the first country to ban it was a shame. But that was a time when India made many mistakes.
Yes, I agree. It was very disappointing to me. And again, as I say, one's just I'm trying to move beyond it. As you say, it's 25 years ago. It's a long time. And I think to be able to be here today, in a kind of completely sort of like ordinary way,
Right,
be walking around, to have the movie opening, which all kinds of people were saying nobody will ever let it be seen, and
Right.
because it's Salman Rushdie or whatever, or it'll be banned or this or that. But none of that happened.
Right.
It went
That's true.
through.
None of that will happen.
Well, it's gone through the whole process. It was actually approved by the censor board without a
Right.
single picture cut.
Right.
Etc. So here we are.
Because we did not have a real item number.
That's true.
Or they would
That's
have
true. Now, in that
put it
case,
to
there would
close
be a problem. Now, you
examination,
see, that was my mistake.
Yes. Next time.
Next time.
And we'll suggest you can get Malaika Arora.
Yes.
Or you can get.
You can tell me who I
if you
should
get really
cast.
desperate Malika Sherawat. One of those
Oh, that's the desperate move.
but you don't have to. So, in fact, it made me curious also because I used to travel to Pakistan often. By the way, your first reviewer who reviewed your proof copy has now even blamed me
For what? Oh, it's your fault.
It's my fault that that I highlighted the review or I highlighted certain
usually the
portions.
default setting is blame me.
Yes, absolutely. But you're too big a guy right now to blame. Everybody wants to be a friend. So, since we're talking sociology and history, what happened with Pakistan? Why are the angriest Muslims in the world today Pakistani? They are not Palestinians, they are not Iraqis, they are not even Afghans. But Pakistanis.
I can't partly I can't answer the question because I've not been able to go there for almost 25 years.
Not even when your mother passed away.
Not even when my mother passed away, which was sad, to say the least. But, the thing is, these things change, because if you'd asked me this question, say, 15, 20 years ago, I would have said the angriest Muslims are in Iran,
Right.
and etc. So these
Right.
things shift. I think a lot of it has to do with economic desperation. If you have a generation of young men who have no hope, that makes you angry, and religion can jump in and be a way of expressing that. I think you have to say a lot of it is to do with education.
Shimon Peres once put to me, he said, he was trying to explain fundamentalism in all religions. He said when young people are hopeless, they have nothing to eat, then somebody comes and says, I will take you to heaven. And this is the menu in a restaurant called heaven. You can order any dish you want and you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to be said for that. This idea that our real life begins after we die, and that this is just a step on the way to that.
Right.
Very dangerous idea, because it makes human life very cheap.
And it makes the present very irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
Very expendable.
Yes, and human life becomes expendable because that's not the point.
Right.
The point is afterwards.
Right.
Unfortunately, this is all we have.
So what future do you see for the Islamic world? You've said that fundamentalism will ultimately destroy itself. It reminds me of something that Nehru once said to Eisenhower.
Oh, yeah?
In fact, I read it in documents declassified by the Americans in 1955, I think, or 56. And Eisenhower is very worried about communism and Chinese and North Koreans had taken his soldiers prisoner. And Nehru is telling him, don't worry, communism has the seeds of its own destruction.
Yes.
I mean, it was something for a sworn socialist to say.
Yeah.
He's been proven right.
He's been, well, I don't know.
So when will you be proven right?
Well, I just think, here's the simple fact, that the world of Islam has to enter the modern world. It has to learn how to live in the modern world, which is we know this world in which information is free, in which people do not live according to, let's say, the cultural codes of Arabia in the 7th century, And you can see that there's a great desire amongst young people
But
across the Muslim world.
frankly, the Arab world was very modern and scientific. 7th century
Once
onwards.
upon a time.
Once upon a time.
No,
Yes.
but I mean now
So
you
it
have,
nearly conquered half the world.
now you have a very backward world. I mean, economically, socially, politically backward. And at some point, in order to thrive, those countries have to modernize. They have to modernize their ideas. They modernize their thinking. They have to modernize their institutions, and they have to offer their people more liberty.
Do you follow the debate out of India a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but yeah, a little bit. I try and keep in touch.
One Midnight's grandchild
Yeah.
became vice president of the Congress
I
Party.
heard that.
Did you listen to that speech?
I did. I saw the transcript of it anyway.
What did you
Yes.
think of it?
No comment.
Salman Rushdie saying no comment.
And we just leave it there.
It's not even a mullah's Maulvi speech. It's a,
No, I'm just being polite.
I think that says a lot. So what's the word for people of the subcontinent? We are proud of you. We celebrate you. We ban you. We detest you.
Well, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
We'll never disown the fact that you are one amongst us. And yet we will send gorillas in movies
Well, that's not
to bring the wrath of
Well,
the
once
Holy
upon a
Quran
time.
on you.
Once upon a time.
Right.
We hope the world has just become a little bit more civilized.
You are the recipient of a lot of internet abuse.
Yeah, but also, but so is everybody. You know what I mean? Abuse is what happens on the internet. And that's a worrying thing.
And how do you deal with it? Do you ignore it?
I block them.
That's what Tom Friedman says. I just don't read it. Anybody abuses me, I block
Just
them.
block them.
So it doesn't
Just
come
straight
to me
away.
again.
Yes, the hell.
But someone else told me that, I read everything because I'm training to be a Buddhist. And I've now said to myself, I'll keep reading everything until it stops
No,
bothering
that's masochism.
me. not Buddhism.
That's not Buddhism.
So Salman, not given to masochism or sadism. What's next for you? I believe you're coming back to writing fiction.
Well, I'm just, I had this big year last year with these two big projects coming out, this film and the memoir. It's time for new work, So I'm working on just beginning to work on a new novel. I'm slow, so it'll take a while. I'm developing a television series in America, so we'll see if that happens. So there's some new work.
It's something unconventional. It's
sort of science fiction
political
thing.
science fiction.
So it's got
How
political
do you describe
elements.
political science fiction?
You'll have to wait and see.
But so anything Salman Rushdie does will be unusual.
Well, I don't even know that it's going to happen yet. It's in development, so we'll see.
Well, whatever you do, I'm sure you will keep doing new things and
Yes,
keep
I'm
coming
sure
back
so.
to India. And I
Please.
promise you, we'll disappoint you. We'll never get bored to see you coming to India.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful having this conversation
Thanks
with you.
very much. Thank you.